to my leadership series where I interview leaders that I love and that have impacted my life, and you're one of them. So, um, today, obviously, as I said, I'm chatting with Mark. He was the president of my last employment at Neoss for the last 3 years before leaving, and he has a long career in sales, managing domestic and international markets and teams in the medical and dental field. We collectively named him the best boss ever. And he's someone I not only love working with, but will always be a friend in my life as a result. One of the things I love about Mark is his energy, enthusiasm, and how he naturally empowers and easily connects with people. He's amazing at building high-performing teams and is someone who has your back. His strengths show that he's a man on a mission, quick to take action, a visionary who's determined to make a positive impact and follow his instincts. He's super focused and organized. He woos people and he gets things moving. In our collaboration, I particularly valued our aligned vision of business opportunities. In one of the business assessments that we took, while we have different personalities, our results were identical. And that's pretty unique. This synergy was a breath of fresh air, especially considering my past experiences where, despite local support, my business ideas and needs often faced resistance from our headquarters. So working in an environment where my insights resonated and embraced was incredibly affirming and so much fun that our entire team was re-energized in the process. Outside of his work, his wife Cindy, his family and friends are his priority, and he loves to entertain, working out, jeeping, and he also has a tractor to play with. So, Mark,
Oh, man.
I'm so happy to chat with you about your leadership experiences and the wisdom pearls you've acquired over the years. So, welcome.
Sure.
Is there anything that you want to
Yeah,
add?
so I would just like to say thank you, Thea, for the kind words and introduction, but also, it's funny because I worked in this business for 25 plus years and in various leadership roles. And as you mentioned, I've led teams. I've had pretty good success over the years, but I never really put a definition on it and what my strengths were, what my skills were. I mean, I knew I had skills, or obviously I wouldn't have made it this far. But I think for you, when we started working together, you helped me identify those in a more clear fashion. And I think it's also helped me to focus on my strengths, right? We all have these internal weaknesses that we spend a lot of time on harping on in our internal thoughts, and it doesn't get you anywhere other than in a negative mode. And I don't like to be in that place. I like to be very positive. And if I do face negative challenges, I'm quick to dust myself off and move on because I can't function in that negative mode. It doesn't work well for me. One thing I always, when I did my strength assessment with the Clifton strengths, it found that I was a very futuristic person, and I never really realized. I always knew I was, but I never I don't know how to explain it, right? Like I'm always thinking ahead. I'm always looking for what I'm going to do next or who I'm going to be working with. And whenever I don't see a lot of talent around me or people going in the right direction, then that's a signal for me that I've got to find a new organization or a new role to tap into. And just one more thing, when my role at BioHorizons, I was there 20 years. I never had the same role for more than a couple of years. So within one organization, I was constantly moving to different roles. I ended up moving over to the international business. So I've always had a lot of changes in whether it was in one organization or several. So anyway, that's just a little bit the way I see the focusing on strengths and whatnot. But I learned from you. I mean, I always knew it, but when you sit down and put it on paper, it's much different.
Yeah, so like what was the insights it brought you, because it's one thing, like you said, knowing it beforehand, and then when you take the assessment and the conversations that we had, obviously following that, what did that shift for you, I guess?
Yeah, I think it's just not a reminder, but it validates my thinking, right? Like I worked with a professional coach many years ago and really wasn't very popular. I was going through a transition in my last job, and I was like, I needed to talk to somebody that's not my wife, my family, my coworkers, because that's obviously I was emotionally tied. And when I started working separately with a career coach, it put things down to the basics, like, focus on yourself, not in a selfish way, but what is it that that drives you and not let others drive it for you, I guess, is one way to look at it. But I mean, it all comes down to the basics, right? If we're happy in our careers, if we're being engaged, if we're being, I think for me, it's if I'm trusted to do my job, I can soar. It's when that micromanagement hits that I just go into my I can't function. And big companies, that's what it's all about. They don't want decision makers. They want people who fall in line. If you're in a startup company, they want decision makers and they want folks that are fast paced, moving, thinking strategically, putting plans in place and moving, right? That doesn't work in a large company. And that's not where I sit even today. I can't function in that. I could function in that, but to me, it's boring and not very motivating for me, regardless of the financial aspects of it.
Yeah, because your top strength is all about making an impact. And if you can't make an
Yeah,
impact, it triggers every part of you. And
yeah,
that's another thing that I mean, that's what I love about the strengths, because you're looking at actually what you naturally have going for you, and it validates all these things that we know inside about ourselves, and then we can kind of put it into action instead
sure.
of what many companies also do, right? They will focus on the weakness. Oh, you're really good at this, but you need to
Yeah,
focus on
but
this.
we can improve here. And most of us aren't going to change much. Let's face it. I mean, I'm 59 this year. It's like I'm hardly going to change my whole my way. Why should I, right? What's worked for me is work. But obviously, I think listening more and being open to people and their ideas, I think I've become better at that. I don't have all the answers. I mean, maybe at one time I thought I did, but as life goes on, you realize you can only be successful if you're around people that come to you freely with ideas and feel that they can come to you with those challenges or whatever it might be.
Yeah, no, that's true. So, if you were to look back at your long career in sales as a leader and even carrying the bag, because I think that's what you started
Yeah.
with, and what have you learned if you would look at it from a top level? What are the things that you find are important characteristics, not only for leaders to be a leader, but also like, even when you're working as a sales professional, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
What would you say to your younger
I
self?
mean, I think we're all selling, right? Everybody's selling somebody something. We're selling an image, we're selling a product, we're selling something to selling our wives something we want to purchase, whatever, right? I think it's really about connecting. I know it is. If you can't connect with a strong, compelling case or just connecting with people, then nothing's going to work. I mean, you can't close a customer unless you connected with that customer. And that sometimes it's personal connection, it's a like-minded connection, it's a hobby connection, or you're providing a resource to that individual. And that's really what it comes down to. And I think along with connection is trust. If you say you're going to do something, you sure better do it. And you better follow up. I think that we hear a lot in today's world where the follow-up's terrible, the service is no good. And it's true. I mean, a lot of industries have suffered, especially in the modern technology. The way we communicate today, it's much different than it was 5 years ago. But I think connecting is probably the biggest aspect of selling. And I carried a bag, I knocked on doors, I was with a startup no one ever heard of. And yeah, sure, you can sit around and say, we can't sell, the doctors won't let me in, all the excuses. It's funny, salespeople can make a list of excuses, but they can't make a list of hows, right? How they're going to overcome those excuses. We spend more time coming up with the reasons why we can't do something as opposed to what can we do creatively to grow and close business.
So, as a leader, what have you found, but beyond connecting, so to speak, what creates happy and engaged salespeople who perform? and maybe even overperform.
I think you give them the runway, right? It's like the worst thing you can do is not support your people. And I think early in my career, I used to struggle with I wanted to give them so much support that I couldn't get corporate to align with the support I wanted to give, right? So I took it personally, like, oh, I'm doing a bad job. I can't deliver. I can't get this, this guy or this girl what they need to go out and make an impact, right? But really what most people want is somebody that it's going to fight for them, right? And I can't win all the arguments. I can't get everybody everything they need, and nor would you want to. But I think that's a real lesson that I learned is like you can't give everything to everybody and be successful. You have to kind of hone in on what the actual needs are. I think when I look back at some of the people I work with, when I came into an organization, you give them the runway, and you trust them, and they're gonna go out and do it. If there's any waiver of trust, then it all dissipates, right? And I think it's really hard to have a motivated team if they don't trust that you have their back, as you mentioned earlier, and that you're going to support them, that you're going to go out and do the ride along, knock on the door, do the same thing that they've done, right? Or are trying to do. So I think that's real important. Um, I also learned a lot working internationally because what works in North America is completely different than Israel or Middle East or Australia. Every market is so different because of the people that work in it, the dentistry. I'm in dentistry, so the dentistry that goes on in those markets. So I feel like I've been able to go to different countries and be the same curious person and sit back and absorb instead of going in and trying to tell them this is the American way and you have to do it this way. That just doesn't fly. Think global, act local. It's one of the terms we used to use because you really have to bring on the local flavor. And you can't walk in and try to teach them, the way you do it, the way you did it at your last job, or the way you do it in a specific country that you worked in your whole life. So I don't know, going off track a little bit, but
No, but I mean that's great, Mark, because I think that kind of nails the points in many ways, right? Because like, what are the characteristics that are important as a salesperson and as a leader? I mean, it's often the same, but you have to be flexible. You have to be able to connect, and you have to be able to listen to the people, right? If you're coming in with your agenda, you've missed it from the get-go, because then people just, I mean, we are intuitive people, whether we talk about it or not, but we know that when people are bullshitting us or they're just coming in with an agenda, if they're not interested in us, so to speak,
yeah.
right? Whether you're a manager or someone you're just talking to in general, you can identify that quickly, and
And I
that also
think
determines results, right?
a lot of companies make the mistake of promoting the best person that has delivered in certain areas of the business, whether it's sales, production, whatever, and they roll them into this management role because they paid their dues, right? It's their
Yeah.
time, much like politics, right? We see how that turns out. So I think you have to be really clear on understanding what is the strength of an individual and not put them in that position of that they're going to fail because it's not where they should be. And I think it's not easy to do that, to identify that if you're not open to it and really see it. But I'm really good at finding the person and putting them in the role that suits them, or coaching them into that role. And I did it we did some of that at Neoss with people that were just sort of there for a long time and not being utilized. And you could just, when we started making those changes and moving people into different roles, you could just see it in their face and their smile and the way they conducted themselves. And I'm speaking to several, but for me, that's extremely rewarding when you can take people and move them into, and they're doing it on their own. It's not because I'm a magician. It's like I'm the facilitator, right? But when they start to really perform in those roles, it's quite that for me is what is exciting about being in management, I guess.
Well, and I will say that, one of the reasons that you were so successful is that you didn't have ego. So you have this thing that you want to make a big impact when it comes to people. You listen to people, and you intuitively, like you said, you move them in roles. But then, like, you were constantly motivating each individual, because that's the thing that stood out, right? You called and talked to people, on a regular basis. The frequency varied, obviously, depending on their role. You and I work very closely, so we spoke all the time. But, that thing of, just, you illustrated, I guess, you walk the talk, right? And that's, I think, what makes you unique, that you, first of all, you'd learn to delegate. And, there was no ego there. And there were like conversations. So even if we had different viewpoints, just the, ability to have the conversation and just, like I say, like my ideal brainstorming session is you come in, two people with two ideas, and then you create a third solution, right? That's when you're really listening to each other. And then, of
Well, the other
course, there's
thing is
restrictions, but
you can also, when you're in a leadership role, a lot of people will follow you because they have to, right? Because you're the leader, right? Or you have that job. Like, I'm not saying, I don't know how to say this, right? Like, because you have this title, people will follow you, one, because it's the chain of command, right?
yeah.
It's also not the, where am I trying to go with this? That's not the kind of following you need. That's not the kind of following you want people to follow you because they believe in the mission and they believe that you're making good decisions, right? I mean, during COVID, we were all struggling, and we were financially, the business had shut down. We were trying to I was looking at new products to bring in to get us through the COVID nightmare, with some air cleaners and things like that. And everybody was listening to me, and I had a pretty good plan. We had a business plan. We were going to move forward, bringing on this new product, but something in my gut was telling me like, this is not our wheelhouse. If we do this now, once COVID ends, where are we going to be? What I'm thinking futuristic, what's it going to look like? And when I told everybody, I said, listen, I decided, guys, we're not going to move forward with that project. Everybody was like, we didn't really agree with it either, like, but nobody wanted to say it. It wasn't like they didn't want to share. It was like we are all kind of thinking the same thing, but we had to go through a process together, right? Like they're looking to me for guidance, and I was I was giving it, and I was pretty high on it because I was trying to find cash flow, right? And anyway, it didn't go, and then we could have moved forward with it, but we decided to not go forward with it, and everybody was on this. We were all still on the same page. I don't know how you explain that, but it was kind of a learning for all of us, It was a different time in business too, but
Yeah, a lot has changed since. Yeah, what I remember is like while people were home Netflixing, we were working harder than anyone
we
else.
were
There was no
exactly.
breaks for us. We were working, and just to keep, shifting into the remote reality, right? Of keeping the salespeople engaged and motivated. That was part of it, right? But also, yeah, I
And
mean, it was a very
keeping
productive.
yourself motivated. I mean, it was really hard. I'm a motivated person, and if you tell me
Yeah.
I can't leave my house anymore for several months when that's all I've done for 30 years, like it's not an easy position to be in. And how do you motivate people on a video screen? It's very difficult, right? But we also learn how to work smarter that way too, not to always jump on the airplane, you know? But
Absolutely. I think there were a lot of lessons that came out of that. I mean, globally, for goodness sake. I mean, business is not the same today as it was before, from a
no.
good and bad perspective, so to speak, right? But at the end of the day, like you said, it's about connecting with people and showing that you care, whether you like people or not, because that's not part of the equation, right? But you have to listen. And what you were saying also about promoting people just because they paid their dues, that's the biggest mistake that I've seen over
Happens
all the
every
years,
day. Happens
because
all the happening right now as we speak.
yeah, you can be an excellent salesperson and then a sucky manager, and then other people pay the price for that as you get promoted up instead of fired, because we've
Yeah.
all we've all experienced personalities like that. So how would you explain energy, right? So when you talk to a person about having an energy from your perspective, how would you talk to?
I mean, you got to look at where your energy comes from. Like you said, my energy comes from building a nice life, building, fun things to do, supporting family and being there for family. But my energy really for at work comes from the people around me. Like I feed off the energy of others, right? If I know I'm making an impact and we're moving people in the right direction, you can feel that it's undeniable, the change in those folks that comes back to you, right? So I think it's all about, they say, giving, what's, I don't know the term, you give out and what comes back to you, right? Tenfold. So it's the more you give, the more that comes back to you, in so many ways. But yeah, I mean, that motivates me when I step into a room or a conference and there's all the dentists are there and I start connecting with the people that are there. You could see my lights going off, right? I start to, to absorb that energy in the room. I want to make sure everybody feels welcome. They're learning, they're here for the right reasons. And again, I'm connecting, right? I can connect with 1,000. I've had symposiums with the $1,500 doctors in attendance, and I feel like I worked that room and connected with everybody there. I mean, obviously not in the same way, but I can connect with a small group or a very large group. And I think that's where I get my energy from. And I may be dog tired for 4 days after, but sooner or later I dust myself off again and go back out.
Yeah. No, I mean,
But
and that's where I hear your talents. You're focused, you go deep, but
yeah,
you're also wooing people. So that's how you can work the room, but also connect so that it's not shallow. You're
yeah.
infuse your energy, so to speak, on the people. But how do you energize yourself when you're not in front of a customer? What would you say about your energy? How do you keep your
I mean, I think
energy? And what
the
is the
same thing.
energy for you? Is it like an internal thing? Is it
Yeah, I mean, I think it's internal. Like I was at yoga at 6 this morning, right? I was like Monday morning, it's raining in Texas. Nobody really wants to get out of bed. It's cold. And I dragged myself out. I not dragged, but I went to the yoga and I got there and it was like, I feel like $1,000,000 now, right? I mean, I do that on 3 days a week. It's part of if I don't do that, then my energy's tapped. I won't be a happy Monday, right? Like I've got a routine. I just heard today in yoga that if you do something for 60 days, straight or 60 days consistently, it becomes your habit, right? If you do it, it used to be 90 days, now it's 60. I guess they shrunk the time. So it's like just getting out and I like to do things consistently the same way, the same type of events. But I also like to change it up a bit too. I get bored real easy. So but I switch from weight training to yoga to doing my own workout versus classes. But I also think surrounding yourself with good people and having nice meals. We spend a lot of time in Colorado and we entertain, as you mentioned, we like to cook, but people say, open up a restaurant. It's like, no, I don't want to cook for the masses. I want to cook for people I love and that love my food and that eat. Otherwise, you don't get invited back.
Yeah, no, that's so true. That's awesome. So switching into, building teams and hiring people, right? So you said that you have this intuitive knack to just know where to place people, but as you're interviewing people or as when they're sending in their resumes or whatever, what do you look for and what makes you decide to hire someone for a position?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of lots of reasons, right? I mean, I think you can always find somebody who's qualified or has done that's a similar job, and that maybe always looks like maybe it's the safe hire, right? We all go to that, oh, this person's done this, so they can come in here and do it again. And 99% of the time, that does not work, right? I think you have to bring in people with fresh ideas, fresh perspective. I think if you hire somebody who would not have been given an opportunity in your organization just because of their lack of experience, and you bring them in, they're going to be with you longer, they're going to be more loyal, and obviously you have to train them and coach them and things and take them down a path. But those have been my best hires, the non-dent, like we're in dentistry, but the non-dental folks that I've hired have been turned into superstars, number 1 reps, and moved on in those companies, right? If you're looking for the cookie cutter hire, you can find that, but that's the safe hire. Now, a lot of companies won't allow you to step out of that box and hire the person who's not an ideal on paper. But I also want to know what have you done?
Yeah.
What have you done? Like where did you make an impact in your business? If it's just job jumping every 2 years, there's a sign right there. This person's got a problem with one, they may not do well in the companies they've hired, but they're picking the wrong employer too. Like you have to interview the employer. It's not about them. It's about them interviewing you, but you've got to pick where it is you want to go next and where it is you think you can make an impact. You got to fight for it. They're not just going to give you that job. It's getting harder these days with all the LinkedIn. You see these jobs on LinkedIn. It's like 100 people respond in 24 hours. How are you going to stand out in that cesspool? Good luck. I mean, my days we knocked on doors, but it doesn't work like that today. So yeah, I mean, I think I've made a lot of mistakes. I've hired all the wrong people, but I've hired a lot of the right people. We've all done it. We've all made, your best interview is your worst hire. Let's put it that way. And that's a fact. And you can read there's a lot of self-help books that say the same thing. Someone you think, wow, that's the best interview. This person's going to kill it. Almost 99% of the time, it's your worst hire in my experience.
So how do you avoid then? I mean, how do you then select who to hire if the
I
person
think
that interviews well is gonna
I mean,
fail?
I'm not saying the interviews well, but it's like if you're blown away by the candidate and there's not a little apprehension,
Yeah.
then something's wrong, right? I mean, obviously, if your gut's telling you absolutely not, that's one thing. But there's always, whenever you hire someone, there's always a time to pull the trigger and make the offer. And if you're not a little bit anxious, or maybe I don't know how to. If you're not 100%, it doesn't mean that's not going to be a good hire, right? I mean, does that make sense? It's like if they have 80% of everything that you think is going to work, then you can work on the 20%, and maybe it's another 10% to take them over the hump, right? But it does come with experience. I think interviewing everyone exactly the same way is key. The same set of questions, the same circumstances, the same setting is very good, because if you get off in different discussions with people, it can easily turn into what's the you can easily sell yourself that this is the best candidate, right?
Yeah.
But then you step off your routine during that process. That's kind of when that goes in that direction. So I think having a consistent interview process is key. And then also having them talk to other people in the organization too. Like, I mean, we all can interview the same person and have a very different view of that individual. I'll tell you one story. I was in an interview with colleagues of mine. We were interviewing people, extensive hiring time, and we were in it with a candidate, and he was clicking his pen, the old click pens, the whole time during the interview, and it was driving me crazy. Like I was like, I'm going to stab this person with the pen. And my colleague, I said, "What do you think of this guy? What was up with the pen?" He goes, "What pen?" He never even noticed it. So what my point is, everybody picks up on a different vibe from people, right? And I was like, it's a small thing, but it's like everybody's not seeing the same indicators, I guess. I mean, that's a kind of a basic story, but that's an example of you're all going to see different things. But at the end of the day, the manager has to make the decision on who they go with, and generally you'll have the support if you include some of the rest of your hiring team, I think.
So what are the qualities that are important when you build a team that you enjoy managing?
I mean, obviously, if I trust people, I think trust is obviously key. Trust between each other, communication. We're all, making sure we're on the same page. I think people that, have like-minded habits like I do, they get up every day. They're not sleeping until 9 o'clock. They have a plan when they leave to go make sales calls. I mean, a lot of reps get up in the morning. Which way should I point the card, left or right?
Yeah.
And that's what they do. And I think you've got to have a real strong plan and a mission. But yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty basic. I think, we generally hire and work with people that are like-minded, like us. And I like diversity. I mean, I think it's very clear that, I don't have all the answers. So that's why I like people from different backgrounds, different social backgrounds, different ethnic backgrounds. It takes a whole village there. And I learned a lot of that working internationally, for sure. As Americans, we're a little bit set in our ways, and we want everyone to follow the American way, and that's clearly not how international business flows, nor should it. But you have to learn what moves in different cultures, and I think that's part of listening for sure.
Absolutely. And there's different perspectives also, like culturally, so to speak, right? I mean, the benefit of the US is that we have people from over the world in one
Yeah.
country. But if it's not, a recent immigration, so to speak, then you get, Americanized, if you will. I certainly have been over the years, but
Yeah,
I
that's
still
right.
have my different perspectives from having been brought up in a different part of the world. So I think that's super important, because that's also how you kill myths, right? Like all these belief systems that we have, that things are the way they are. And then you travel and you notice, like, wow, what's true in one area of the world is not true in another part of the world. So you expand your views a lot when you travel. And I know that you've traveled obviously a lot, especially all the years that you managed international
Yeah.
sales. So what else would you say that you picked up during those years, just speaking on travel,
I mean, I
about
think it's,
people and business?
yeah, I mean, compassion, right? For compassion for cultures and compassion for the way people live in a country without all the resources that we have in the United States. I mean, we have everything. We're the richest country in the world. Unfortunately, we don't have any money, but we're everything. Somehow we find it, right? But we are a wealthy nation, and when you go to another country where that's not, no matter how smart the individual is or how good they may be, they're just born in the wrong circumstances, right? They're never going to be able to shine the way you can in the United States, which makes one of the beauties of America and why a lot of people want to come here. But it's also humbling to go to other countries and see they're just as compassionate as we are and want to succeed like we do and want to grow and support their family and build wealth. Everyone wants the same thing, whether you're in a communist country or, the people are generally aligned with the way Westerners feel a lot, right? So I think that you have to just put that in perspective. I mean, I worked in China, I worked in Israel, I've been all over the world, like you said. I mean, almost 5 million miles with American Airlines. So I've been a few places. And for me, I'm a guy who came from very humble beginnings with love and family, but no passports and no vacations. Like we didn't go places. We just weren't, we had no resources for that. So I try to learn from those cultures. I mean, if you speak about Japan, I worked a lot in Japan, and they're on time, they're very specific. There's nobody's late for anything. Like I love all that because I'm like that. I want to be, you're gonna do it, right? And but then it's also frustrating because they don't make decisions very easily. Everybody has to agree. So everything is decided by consensus. And I'm like, that for me, that's a hard thing to maneuver. I'm ready to go, make the decision, let's go. But it also, I learned from that things should be more consensus oriented, and let's analyze the situation before we jump, right? It may sound good, but when you start digging into the details, it might not be the best business solution and business decision to be made.
Yeah,
So
I
I'm
mean, isn't it the scope that determines that very often? There's certain things that you can just go with your gut and roll with it, and then certain things,
I
especially if
mean,
it's
China,
big.
everybody's running to China because it's a 1.4 billion population. Everybody thinks they're going to get rich in China. Well, once you start working in China, you realize there's more to it than that, a lot more to it. Like it's not an easy place to do business. Your chances are you're going to lose. Big companies have failed, will continue to fail. They want to go there and try to implement Western management on Chinese. You're going to fail for sure, So. But I didn't know that. I believe what everybody else said. I landed in the Beijing airport. I'm like, this is phenomenal. This place is huge. We're going to be rich. We're going to grow. And in spite of that, we were never very successful. We had modest success. And even today, I don't think the company that I was with is still doing great in a market like that. They're trying to apply the American values, American ways. Doesn't work.
What would you
You'll
say are your biggest lessons or insights as far as doing business and especially internationally?
I just think it's been, as I mentioned, it's eye-opening the way that we're so like-minded with the rest of the world, but we don't really sit there and try. We don't really take that in, right? We just automatically think that we're different and it's going to stay different. I think when you crack those barriers, it's phenomenal, right? I've got friends all over the world. Literally, I'm not bragging, but I could go stay in most countries and people would invite me to their home to stay, and that's from not because I'm a good connector. I've connected with you. I built real relationships in all parts of the world. I had a friend from Japan. She said, "You said you were coming this year." I haven't been there, but I'm like, maybe this year I'll make it. And, it's just that's the kind of thing that makes you feel good inside, right? You got friends. I've been to Iran. I've been to the Middle East. I've been in people's homes in Iran. I've been to people's homes in many countries, right? I think that's a sign of that you're somebody that people want to be exposed to and learn. They want to learn from you like you want to learn from them. So I don't know. I feel like
So
I'm rambling.
what would you say if you could give everyone a message in the world that they would have to hear? It could be on anything, business or life or whatever.
I think be humble, right? I think, be humble and be respectful and listen, right? And learn. Don't try to, maybe not try to impress out of the gate, could be some good advice. But yeah, I mean, I've learned a lot. I'm still learning. I think that's the other thing is if you're not learning, in your job or in your home life or in your travels, then stay home. Like there's no point, right? Or switch jobs or whatever. But for me, that's key. I have to be growing in many different ways. And I think one thing I stayed with a company for a long time in my career, which there was positives to that, but I also feel like I cheated myself because now that I moved out to different organization, it's eye-opening. You can stay somewhere out of blind loyalty and it's simple to stay, it's easy to stay, the money's good, all the reasons, right? And I think the minute you step out of that, you'll see a different you or a different way of thinking, you know.
Well, companies are much like countries in a way, right? Because you have a company culture, and especially when we're young and we end up in whatever career we end up, it's easy to think like, oh, this is the way it is. And then you don't
Yeah.
move unless you're forced to, or you have a
Well,
desire to.
there's no training on how to not manipulate, but how to move through different departments, right? If you go to finance and you're screaming all the time and you're not going and building any kind of relationship, you're not going to get much from finance or HR or whatever, right?
Yeah.
You have to like figure out how to work with people. And it's the same whether you're doing it in a large corporation, a small corporation, or you're traveling globally. You have to figure out how to make it work
Yeah.
and work with those individuals. And it's not simple. It's not simple. And I still get frustrated by those same things. It's human nature, right? Especially when I know I'm right. I don't
Well,
have
you have a
time
desire.
anymore.
But you have a desire to grow, so isn't that part of it as well, right?
Yeah,
So if
yeah.
things are in stalemate, so to speak, right, then you get frustrated because you're a person who needs to be in action as well, and you're
Yeah,
guided by
100%.
your vision, and you want to take action and
And
move the needle.
also, you take a job, you want the job to be, the salary to be right, all these things to be
Yeah,
right. Well, no job is going to be 100% right, but the money will only last for a week. You'll be happy,
yeah,
right? You leave a company and then they call you to come back and you go back, it never works, right? They try to keep you, right? It means mentally you've already checked out, but it's really hard to find. I think one thing I used to find when talking to friends, I was so passionate in my roles and I liked where I was and they weren't. And it's almost like they're jealous because they're like, oh, I'll never find a gig like that, or he's lucky, and it's like you have to create your own luck. I mean, obviously I've had luck. If you don't, without any luck and some positive people around you, you don't get too far either. So it's about working hard, but you also need some luck on your side. But you got to be around people that are doing things and moving,
well, and
you
be
know.
around people that actually see your talents, I think, as well,
True.
right? People that lift you up, so to speak. And that goes back to the company culture.
Yeah.
If you're in a culture, like one of the things that you did is that, it was fun again, and we could, we were energized. I mean, we had a good culture before, but after we didn't. But, you know, this thing of like not only feeling safe, but also being energized and like, okay, let's move things here, right? Like, because
Well, when I came over, everybody was handcuffed. Everybody been
yeah,
handcuffed for 6 years, literally. Nobody could make
yeah,
a deal. Nobody could make a move. Nobody could make a hiring decision. It was all just like, what have you people been doing here?
yeah,
Like, I mean, no, nothing against the folks. Everybody was doing the best they could with the environment that they
yeah,
had, right? And
yeah,
I didn't do, I mean, I don't think I did much other than we like took the handcuffs off and
yeah,
said, bring me all the deals, even if they're crazy. Bring me
yeah,
every deal. And you
yeah,
know what? They weren't bringing me crazy deals. They were bringing me deals. And first I was worried, oh, we're giving away too much stuff. We're cutting too many, too much pricing is going on here. And at the end of the month, the P&L kept rising. The margins kept going up. The sales kept going up. And before that's a game changer for a company. Everybody starts feeling different, right? That they can be successful. I love to turn a business around. It's this because I can do it. I know I can do it.
yeah,
If I can't do it, I'm gonna find a way to do it.
yeah.
So, I mean, I've never not been successful at business. Um,
Well, but isn't it also like when you get, like you said, you have free reins, right? Because when you have free reins, then you can really tap into your talents, but
Well,
you can
you're never
engage
gonna have free
others.
reins, but if you have the support of the leadership to be
Yeah,
able to be trusted, let's say, just like I told you earlier about the same way you treat your people, I want to be treated the same way from my leadership,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And again, I can't have everything I want. There's always reasons leadership can't give you certain things that you may not know about or understand at the time, but down the road, things always become clear, right? There's could be other underlying parameters in that organization that they just can't share with you, right? So
yeah,
I think I've learned a lot about that over the years that you try to blame one or two people, but it's really not, it's an organization that has to work right. It's
yeah.
never one person. It's never just your boss or his boss, or there's always a group of things that
There's
affect it.
always a boss, no matter what
There's always
level.
a boss. It's yeah, the stock market's I mean, it's always a
Yeah,
boss.
yeah.
Financial, your owners, your new owners, your last owners. Crazy.
But even if you have restrictions like that, at least in my experience, it's about if you have an open communication kind of policy where you can talk about it and listen to each other, then you can at least, prioritize from a different point of view and you're not feeling, cabooshed, if you will, right? Like, it's more like,
Well,
okay, let's
sometimes it helps to talk
reprioritize.
about, you put some plan on paper. Now you have to deliver the plan, right?
Yeah,
Verbally, whatever. Like sometimes it doesn't come out the way you written it or the way you thought. And that's why you need counter whatever counter view, right? Because you want to flesh it out. I do that. I send a if I have I've had some ideas and I start to flesh it out, throw a couple of nuggets out there and see what kind of feedback I get. See if my plan's going to be able to be sold or not, right? That's
yeah,
sort of what you do. And
yeah,
if it's not, then I'm like, yeah, maybe I'm not on the right track here. I got to adjust here. So it's I mean a lot of it comes with experience and intuitive, decision making, but um yeah, so it's kind
but
of
as a
how
visionary, haven't you found at times that it was not the ideas, it was the time or the timing, so to speak, right? Like that you were ahead of the curve, right? Maybe you're initiating things that, oh yeah, in 5 years, everyone is going to do it.
I see. That's why I said to you earlier, I never thought of myself as like this visionary where I could see things, right? But
Yeah,
I can see what I can see and feel and pick up on is if the place is moving in the right direction.
yeah.
Does that make sense? Like if people are aligned with the different departments and the leadership and everybody's, uh, what's the word? Collaborating, right? And I'm talking about arguing too. Like you can't always, it's no fun to agree with everybody. Like you need to have some discussions to flesh out the ideas, right? So I think that's part of it. I don't want a bunch of fans. I want people to challenge me in my decision making because that makes me a better leader. Bring it on, and I'll admit it if I'm wrong. And I'm wrong. I'm not, I mean, I don't have all the answers. You always say that. I don't have all the answers. I have a team for that, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, that's spoken as a great leader. I would
Well,
say,
it's really what works, I mean, there's no training for leadership. There's many books and I read lots of them and you end up finding your own internal instincts are probably pretty good. And those books just sort of reaffirm what you already think or you may have thought. But there's no flip of the switch that, when I went from sales to management, I still kept the sales territory because that was my comfort zone. I would
mhm,
go out and make sales calls and I'd manage 3 days a week and I'd call on customers 2 days a week. I did that for years. When we were a startup, you had to, but
yeah,
I kept that even when they told me you got to give up your territory. I'm like, no, that's how I stay connected. I got to keep a territory. And then you realize you can't do both. But so even now, when I go out and travel and co-travel, I want to go out and take me to the customers, take me in the door. I want to walk in the door like you walk in the door. Show me what's cooking here. That's it. That's a sign of a good leader too. You can't sit in the ivory tower now in the video, and you can, and lots of people do, but you got to connect with the customers and the business, I think, to be
and I think that
successful.
goes for every level because then you understand. Because even if you're in accounting, let's say, right?
Oh yeah.
Because sometimes companies restrict who can do what, right? Like, if you include the entire team, like in a sales meeting, right? For instance, if you include everyone so that they get to experience what it's like and hear from customers, etc., then they have a better understanding
Oh,
why XYZ is happening.
We were fortunate with international. We would take people on these trips where we would do big conferences. We'd take an IT person, we'd take customer service people, we
Mhm.
would take, everybody because one, we needed the help, but we realized quickly, like, if you just go with a small team and you don't bring some other folks in, you're gonna fail, right? So we did that a lot, and that we think you don't think that energized a whole lot of people, but it also created some jealousy for people who didn't get to go, right? So it's a balance, but you always want finance to be involved because obviously an event has to be financially successful. And the more you bring them in, they understand what you're doing. Then when you try to negotiate budgets and things, they get a real good sense of who Mark Neri is, how he works, what he's trying to achieve. If you don't, share that with anyone, then you can see why the answer is no, or you're not going to convince everybody, but you also have a company that's willing to let you bring, other people into the to those events. I think it's great for everybody, and it's good for the customers too. They get to meet the customer care team or
Oh,
whatnot.
absolutely, because they're talking to them all the time and they get to experience, it's this 3D or 5D, whatever experience, right? When you get to meet people, you connect on a completely different level. And if you've already built a connection over the phone for whatever role you're in, then
Yeah.
that deepens because now you have a face to the name, right?
And
And
we
that
had a
helps the
pretty diverse
company.
team. We had people from Ecuador, people from Colombia. I mean, I had a team from all. You say, who did I hire? I hired people that were unique and needed that wanted an opportunity that I knew were going to work hard. And a lot of times they were not Americans. I hate to say
Yeah.
it. Maybe they came to America and they want a piece of the action, but I didn't plan that. It just sort of how things rolled. And we had this diverse team of people that were extremely unique and qualified, or maybe like I was promoted many times without all the qualifications, but I was never unsuccessful. I took that role seriously and I learned it, or I tried to learn. I feel like I learned it. So you're never going to get 100% somebody who's ideal for a specific role. You read these job descriptions and it's like nobody's gonna it's like whoever wrote that job description should be fired because it's not even realistic. Those expectations will never be met. And if anybody thinks they have to meet those, they're probably not going to apply for the job.
That has happened to me more every time I look at something and I'm like, they're
Both of
missing the boat.
us.
Why even
You,
bother?
you look at them like they're crazy people.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's like it's unrealistic and
The world that
especially,
doesn't exist.
yeah. Well, and especially if you want someone to be a high performer, we all have unique traits. And again, that goes back to this thing of being in the strength zone, right? It's
Yeah.
like in sports you do it. So why on earth don't you in
Yeah.
business?
You look at all the best athletes, you watch the quarterback show on HBO where they go into the background of these quarterbacks and the way they live their life. I mean, of course for them to be successful, they have to do that. Like, I mean, I couldn't do that kind of commitment, but it's a commitment that none of us could ever reach, or I mean, I couldn't, but it's mind blowing, the commitment and the injuries they go through and the suffering or Olympic athletes, same thing, right? They spent their whole life trying to get to one set of games, to
But
win
they
one medal.
focus also on a certain specific skill, right? So,
Sure.
and of course, eliminate whatever is in the way, but it's still under the umbrella of,
Yeah.
this is what you're doing. This is what you have a pure raw talent. Let's make you the best
Yeah.
ever instead of like, oh, let's go and take this class on this topic that has no relevance to the performance
Yeah.
aspect or well-being aspect.
Sure.
What do you know for sure?
I woke up today. I'm alive. I know for sure. I don't know for sure I'll be up tomorrow. We'll see. No, I mean, look, I know for sure that I've led a charmed life in terms of being lucky in career and meeting people and traveling the globe. I wouldn't change a thing. I mean, I look back on things I missed in life by not being home on weekends and all those sorts of things, but you can't have everything, right? Something's got to give in life, and you got to just decide what those priorities are. And it's not easy, but you can't overthink it either. I think for sure you got to have fun, you got to laugh, you know. We had a pretty good year this last year, or and the new year's starting, and it's like it's a little bit, I don't know, but you got to laugh about it, and somehow every day some news comes in that's a little better than yesterday, and you just keep moving. So you can't cry about it. You can, but nobody cares. Nobody wants to listen to you cry.
Yeah, it
Or
doesn't
want.
help you move forward. So,
Huh?
yeah, it doesn't help you move forward. So,
No.
who inspires you to be better and why?
I think if you go back, I'm sure it was family to start. I had an uncle who was very inspirational. We had a family that always, whatever we said we wanted to try or do, they said, "Yeah, you can do it." We're like, "What are they crazy? I can't do that." But yeah, it was sort of like this constant reminder that you could do things, right? You could try things and you could go out and do it. And I think as I became older, I exposed myself to different people and different bosses. And like I said earlier, if I looked at the top bosses and I say, I don't want to be any of those folks, like that's not my future, then it's time to go somewhere else, right? You want to be aspiring to be with people that are doing something in life, where they're learning or people you can learn from. And you got to be a sponge. I didn't know dentistry when I started in dental, and I was like, I'm never going to be able to learn this. Like, how can I, they shipped me all the kits and the implants, and I'm like, there's no way. I was shaking. I'm like, I can't learn this business. And here I am, almost 28 years later, before that, I was in the orthopedic industry. So it's like, I didn't, I think you also, you need to you need a break in life. You got to put yourself around, opportunities where you can get a break. It's not easy to do, but it can be done
What's
if you work.
something that you can't live without?
Well, it's funny because I used to say work and, and all that, but you can't live without your family. I mean, you can, but it wouldn't be fun without your dog, our dogs, right? Or but I guess you can live with pretty much. I've considered myself a survivor, so I think you can live with very little means if you have to. May not be fun, but um, I guess there's always something you can live without. You may not enjoy it.
That's true. So the question rather should be what is one thing you can't live without and still stay happy?
That's a tough question.
There's
I mean,
many. It doesn't have to be one. But
no, I mean home is where the heart is, right? I think you can have a you have a nice house and fancy this, fancy cars, but it doesn't matter unless you got someone to ride around with in
yeah.
the car, or cook the meal with at dinner, or lay on the couch, or when you're sick, someone's there to help you, get to the doctor or the surgery. Like without all that, it's very sad for people that don't have a support
What's
system.
one thing that you've done recently that you would like to be acknowledged for?
I don't know. I mean, I think I've received acknowledgement for, doing good things. I think you can't really spend too much time worrying about being acknowledged. I think people know, even though they don't say, they always see, they see in the organization who's doing what. But I guess we had my little nephew here couple weeks ago. He stayed for like 3 days. He's 6 years old. And when I see him, he's putting on my glasses and he's got my shoes on and he's looking at my iPad and everything I do, he's doing, right? So that's pretty flattering that the 6-year-old wants to be like his uncle. It was pretty funny, actually. I'm like, what's this kid? He
He's
wants to
your
be
mini me.
mini me. Yeah, I got lots of
Yeah.
mini me's.
And I believe that bond started early on. I recall
Oh,
a picture.
sure. But now he's a little man. He's 6, It's
Yeah.
like he's all grown up. Funny.
What's something in your life that you're proud of?
I'm proud of the fact that I built a nice life. I mean, I built a successful life. I've got, great people in my family. I've got a wife I married for 36 years, almost actually 37 years this year. That's not easy, not in today's world or any world, to be honest, but we've been able to be, quite happy. And yeah, I mean, I'm proud of my life. I'm proud of what I've achieved. I mean, if it all ends tomorrow, there's not much I haven't done, even though there's things I still would like to do. We've traveled the globe 10 times over, both of us actually. And I don't know. we'll see what the next steps are in life. But
What are you doing when you're in a state of flow?
um, what do you mean? Like, what am I
When
thinking
you're in the,
or?
I mean, in the zone, right? What would you say? What are your in the zone activities where time ceases to exist? Things that you just
When
love
I'm working
doing.
on change, when I'm making changes, when I'm putting, when I'm working with customers, with my people, and just and things are clicking, everybody's getting it. When everybody's in sync, I'm happy. When things are synced. I don't like disorder. I'm too organized.
Yep. So, what are three words that you would hope people would use to describe you?
I would say trustworthy. These are all pretty basic things, but I think honest and trust, I think are big things. I would say someone that has a lot of fun. I like to be seen as someone that brings happiness when you step into a room, and yeah, and make people. I like to make people feel good. I
And
don't
that you do. I can second that.
know. Makes me feel good.
Yeah, I know I'm always energized when we talk afterwards, and that's super important to me, to be around people that you feel better afterwards than, and that's how I want to leave people myself, but you leave people in a better space than when they came, if you will, right?
That's
So if you
amazing.
could ask one person any question, who and what would you ask?
Hmm. That's not an easy question. I don't know. I don't know what to say to that. One question that,
Anytime, and it could be anytime, living or dead.
was it worth it?
That's a good question, actually. You could
Was it
ask,
worth
yeah,
it?
yeah.
I'll know when I meet my maker. Was it all worth it? I would say yes, it was. Yes, it has. Yes, it was. According to my
Well,
book.
even if you think of it, like people in history, leaders throughout history, or any person that you love or admire, or it could be anything from a sports person to a
I mean, I
politician,
think people that
whatever.
make it, if you make, I like to think that I made an impact, right? I like to people say, man, Mark made an impact. Mark made a significant impact on my life or business or whatever, right? Or my sales career, something like that. I think that's what we'd all like to be remembered in that way.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, you've definitely left a trace or a path behind you of people that
Trail
love
of
working
dust.
with you, that I know for a fact, because you still, many of us are still in touch with you. So, I mean, that's one side,
Yeah.
I would say, right? People, and I know you have friends that have been with you for many, many years with, that you work with, or, met in other ways throughout your travels. So, I love being in your sphere, and I'm super happy that we got the opportunity to work
Yeah.
together. It was way too short of a time, but who
Likewise.
knows?
It
Who
was a fast
knows?
3 years.
Yes, yes. So thank you for taking your time out of your busy day and doing this. I really appreciate that, and because I think you're someone I want the world to know about,
See,
because
I
you
hope you do a
are,
good editing job, Pia.
huh?
I hope you do a good editing job.
No, I don't think there's any editing needed here,
Oh,
actually.
come on.
No, it's all about showing you who you are as a leader. And, I think you've displayed a lot of that. So
Good.
thank
I
you
appreciate
so
it. Yeah,
much.
thank you. I'm sorry we took some time to connect, but it's been, how it is. End of the year was a little crazy.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, 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 yeah.
well, thank you
Absolutely.
very much. And thanks for everything you've done for me. And Happy New Year. And I look forward to seeing your next steps as well.
Thank you.